So he had directed for Broadway, including a stage of Chicago and for Los Angeles, I think. But this is his first movie, so it's pretty incredible.
Well, I don't know. I didn't know what I was doing.
Well, I have an opening question for both of you. As usual, for this series, we've asked the artists and the filmmaker that we work with to choose a film inspired by the American values. This is kind of counterintuitive. It's wonderfully counterintuitive. I'd like to ask you both why you picked it.
Well, selfishly, I hadn't seen it for 15 years. So,
Yeah, we haven't seen it since.
and that was really special for us. I'm still actually kind of emotional right now because we haven't seen it. You know, you spend so much time on it. It's so meticulous work. You live it, for a long time, and then you put it away. And I've never really watched a film of ours since it opens. I don't know why, but I just don't. So move on to the next or something. So this was very special to see it.
And this was always, it was so fast when we made this. It was,
Yes.
we had no time for anything. We got shot out of a cannon, so it was...
Musicals were so out of favor at this time. Musicals, the only musicals that were accepted at this time were animated musicals. And that's really all people really accepted. They couldn't accept people singing. And so when we started this, we had a very short schedule, as John just said. And we also had a lot of rehearsal, which that was the thing that saved us. I don't think movie studios quite understand that that's the key, to have that time, because then you don't have to have this endless filming schedule. But it was a $45 million budget, which and we shot it in Toronto, so we got a wonderful tax break up there. And
is that why you shot it up there? Because of the tax?
Yes, exactly. I mean, there were just a few places that we could do it, and we could also, it was close enough to New York to bring the New York City dancers up and work with the New York City talent, which was great, the Broadway talent. But it was one of those, really quick, tight, fast things. We shot, I remember, and this is just an example, in one day we shot, ready? Mr. Cellophane, the Hunyaks Hanging,
It's freezing cold.
and Richard Gere's Tap Dance.
Wow.
In one day. But we were so prepared and so ready, mostly out of fear, because I was so nervous. We were both all nervous. So we were so prepared. I was so crazy prepared. Every shot, every thought, all of that was so planned out, mostly because I was afraid there wouldn't be time to experiment or try. So we had our wonderful director of photography, Dion Beebe, who still works with us, there every single day, every day, working with us while we were rehearsing. So we knew it was all planned, But
Why did you pick it?
Yes, why did I pick it? Okay, well, Laura just went off.
Back to you.
Well, you know what? So I wanted to see it again, but B, I think it says a lot about American values because it says a lot about that there are no American values in this satire. Who is that, Steve? Is that me?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. We could talk without mics.
Probably talk,
Yeah.
Yeah, just shut up.
Up.
But, the greatest thing about this satire of Chicago, which was written in the 20s, when this was really happening, by this wonderful female writer, who was a cub reporter in Chicago. And it was great because, hello? Yes?
There's that buzz.
They're working on it, okay.
It was written as a play, right?
But better
Oh,
with
yeah.
it.
In 26.
It was written as a play, and actually played on Broadway as well. That's better. Yeah, you can kind of hear. Okay, and so what's incredible
About a real case. These were real women.
Oh yeah, they're based.
This was based
Velma
on-
Kelly and Roxy Hart are based on real women.
Yeah, it happened in 1924, and then this one wrote about it in the Tribune, and then wrote a play in 26, and then they did a movie in 27, a silent
They
movie,
did a silent movie of it.
and then they did a cleaned up version in 42 for Ginger Rogers.
Yeah,
where
Ginger
she's
Rogers
innocent,
was Roxy,
it's very
and Velma Kelly had a tiny little part,
yeah.
but it was Roxy's story with
And
Ginger
then
Rogers.
they did the play in 75, And then we did
The
the
musical,
film.
the musical.
The musical,
Yeah.
the musical.
Yeah.
On stage. And then when we did the film, it was funny because at that time, you know, OJ was, because my voice is small, I have a small voice.
No.
Okay. The echoes of OJ were still in the air when we did the film, because it was 95, I think, OJ.
Yeah.
So it was very, it still, the movie still had that when
Yes.
it came out. It was, people were really remembering that. This celebrity criminal was, so it really, it was timely then.
And I will say also at the same time, the craziest thing started happening was reality television just started about the time we were doing this. So everything that was coming out of their mouths about, you have no talent, you know what I mean? I'm a big star, but you can't do anything, you're no, but nothing. It was like, wow, it's sort of happening everywhere you look. And you know, I have to say, as I watch it, it still resonates so deeply. Something that was written in the 20s, the satire of fame and celebrity and the manipulation of the press and all of that, it's so true to the today.
Can I ask you an important question on the right in the Weinstein stuff? Can you
Yes.
comment? I mean, that's like, whew.
We've worked with them a lot, so we know
You know,
him.
it's so interesting about
Thank you.
Harvey, and that is, I mean, one thing I will say about this film that was very helpful for us in many ways is that he wasn't around because he was working on another film. So that was a blessing, not because of Harvey's personality, but because we were able to just do our work.
Yeah, he literally came to the set, I was in 2 days, and he really wasn't, I wasn't around.
You know, it's fascinating with Harvey. You know, everything's not black and white. There's a grayness to everything, and we knew nothing of that side of him. We knew this wonderful, passionate guy who was a bully, no question, but also believed in films like this that would never have gotten made. So
And
it's
believed in Rob's vision. Rob had never done, he directed a television musical before that, which did well, but to take Chicago on, he just sat with, you know, Harvey sat with Rob, and Rob had this, he cracked it. Robbie figured out how to get into to make it a film so people just didn't come out to sing. He made it a vaudeville where it all was happening through Roxy's eye. Robbie, he just thought of that.
Yeah,
And Harvey saw that spark of genius, said, that's it.
I mean, but
That's
just,
the way to
and
do
just
it.
to say, you know, we're horrified by everything, and it's very sad and very upsetting. But our experience with him is a different experience, you know.
And I'd like to talk a little bit more about the inherent cinematic qualities that you saw there, because again, as I said before, this musical completely changed the perception of musical. It revived them. The 60s and the 70s were not good time for the musical. I think film was different. It had a more gritty, realistic kind of feel to it, and so they were considered dead, and they were considered like really dangerous for studios to produce. So I think that it's your vision and it's the cinematic quality of this particular piece that turned the tide. Can you talk a little bit why this makes such a great movie compared to other musicals?
Well, it was sitting around for a long time, you know. I mean, they wanted to make a film of it. We always heard it was going to be Goldie and Liza, and then it was going to be Madonna and Goldie, and you know, and it was like for so many years. And just a quick story of what happened for me is that I had done a production of Cabaret on Stage that had done well, and also thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve. And also had simultaneously done a television movie musical, which did very well too.
Annie.
Of Annie, yeah. So then it was like, well, we should meet him to see if he could direct a film musical. So I went down to the Miramax company, and they asked if I would speak to them about Rent, talk about the film of Rent. They wanted a young director for the film of Rent. And I said at my little meeting, I said, before we talk about Rent, can we just talk about Chicago? Because it was my favorite musical growing up for many reasons. And I loved it. I'd seen it so many times, and I didn't want to see another musical go down. Because when a musical's bad, it's bad. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not, and I knew what they were doing because I'd read the script. I had been asked a few years before to choreograph a film of Chicago with another director. And I read the script, and it was horrendous, because what they did was they tried to take a concept musical, because that's what this is. It's a vaudeville musical. In fact, on stage it was called Chicago, a musical vaudeville. That's what Bob Fosse called it, because all the songs are presentational vaudeville numbers based on vaudeville routines, like Burt Williams' Mr. Cellophane, that song Nobody, or Helen Morgan's The Torch song on top of the piano in Funny Honey, or the Sophie Tucker, Queen Latifah number, it's all based specifically on those routines. So, wait, how do I get, where was I?
Just getting off with the film.
Yeah, so, I'm sorry, yeah, so anyway, yes, the script. So the script tried to turn this vaudeville musical into a book musical where people sang the songs to each other.
Traditional.
So the first, I remember looking, and all that jazz, it was the concept of the script to have I guess a construction worker. It was a big shot of Chicago coming down, and the
Manhole.
The manhole cover would come off, and there was a construction worker that looked right into the camera and said, "Come on, babe, why don't you paint a town?"
With a hard hat.
Because that was the idea, to sort of everybody just sings, and so you just sing, like no and I was horrified by that, So when I spoke to them, I said, I just feel that the most important thing is to retain vaudeville musical form, the concept of this musical. It's not a book musical. It's not a straightforward musical. It's all told through vaudeville routines. So I start to explain to this woman, and then she grabbed me and brought me into Harvey Weinstein's office, and she said, "Say what you just said to me," And he started fighting me, saying, "You can't do a theatrical, seem like a theater piece." And I said, "No." I said, "I think it can be on two different realities. I think you can be in a real world, in a real place, and then be on stage." And so I remember, and I hadn't really thought it completely through, but I knew it could work. It was the time of music videos, where you're in like 4 different places at once. You can cross-cut fast and not think about it. And I remember showing him Mr. Cellophane, talking about Mr. Cellophane. I actually did it for him in the room. And I said, I can pick up my hat in an office with Billy Flynn and put it on, and I'm on stage. And he was just fascinated by that. And then the next day I was offered the film.
And there is another thing that I think is very noteworthy about this particular musical, is that you really fought to have actors, not dancers, not singers. I think over the years Madonna was mentioned, Britney Spears, all kind of people that were coming from the music world. You really brought actors. I didn't remember how great Richard Gere was.
I'd forgotten I actually forgotten how, I think Richard's pretty spectacular in that film, because he really understands the tone.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about your using of actors in the musical, why it's important to bring, in your other musical, you've written Meryl Streep, you've written people that don't normally sing or dance.
It's so funny, because in a way, the great musical theater artists that I think of are actors first. Zero Mostel, Rex Harrison, Carol Channing. I don't know, I feel like it's, and so I think that actors can bring to, especially in film, when you're really trying, there's no proscenium, you're this close to them, you have to believe them. John and I work really hard at that kind of thing, always, because some people treat the musical form as sort of lesser. I disagree, I think it's more. It's that fabulous, adage where when you can't speak, speaking's not enough, you sing. And when you can't move, it doesn't tell the story, you dance. And it should feel that organic, and that's something we always really work on. And for some reason, we've always been drawn to actors. Not that you can't find a singer that can act, of course you can. But, in addition to this, we also needed 3 movie stars to get the film made. So it wouldn't have happened. So we went on the detective search of looking for actors who had musicals in their background, and it was hilarious. Richard Gere had done Danny Zuko in London and on the West End when he was very young. Renee Zellweger had never done a musical, never done theater, but was a cheerleader, so we knew, right? And we thought, well, she's physical. You see all that in Roxy when she's doing all those walkovers and things, that's all, because she knew how to do that. We took advantage of what she could do. John and I auditioned Renee. She was very shy, as you can imagine. She waited till everybody was out of the room, shut the door, and then John and I are standing there with her, and we could tell in literally 5 seconds that she could dance it, just because she had line and knew how to move. And
Great legs, too.
And great legs, and we, you know, and then Catherine was the most obvious choice. At that time, she was a very big star on the rise. We knew about her West End experience. She had starred in 42nd Street in the West End. She was in Annie as a kid. She had been in Pajama Game on stage. She was ready to go. And so that was the first one cast. And then Renee, I never forget having a little interview or meeting with her at the Four Seasons in Beverly Hills, and oh my gosh, she said, you know, I'm reading this thing and I'm seeing the gun, 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 the gun. What is this thing, you know? And I explained it to her why I thought she was so perfect. And I mean, the reason we love her in this part is that her vulnerability, she's a wannabe, you know, and she's frail, and you know, Catherine's this strong, strapping, you know, pro, and that's what it was like in real life. You know, I mean, explain what happened in rehearsal.
Renee just sat back with her little glasses on and just watched. She wouldn't even start doing anything for like a month or so. She'd watch other. This is the great thing about rehearsing this movie. It was a true company. Everyone would come and watch everybody else rehearse. So they felt, oh, we're all in the same boat. Renee would come and watch Richard rehearse, or Catherine. And they kind of, because Renee had never done it before, so she was figuring out how rehearsals worked.
Yes.
But she just watched and watched and watched, and then sometimes didn't really even get there until Robbie called action. She would really surprise us. We were nervous a lot.
She said something to me once, which I'd never heard before, because I was coming from the theater. And I said, well, let's rehearse this, let's rehearse, it was the scene where she fires Billy Flynn. And I said, let's rehearse this in the morning, before we shoot. I said, because, we touched on it, but we hadn't really done it. And so we started doing it, and she was marking it. She wasn't doing it full out. And I said, Renee, she goes, let's not squeeze the lemons. And I thought, man, I've never heard that before. I was like, what does that mean? Not squeeze lemons. And I was like, oh, she's a film actor. She's a film actor. She comes from that discipline. That's what she knows. And she wanted it to happen in the moment, and that was her process, you know? Where Catherine, who had come from theater, wanted to do it 100,000 times over and over, full out every time.
I want to follow up on something you said. You know, when you mentioned when you don't have enough words, you sing, and when you don't have movement isn't enough, you dance. Musical is associated to as a euphoria, buoyancy. You seem to imply that as a genre, it offers an extra level of depth, a further level of depth. Is that?
Well, I mean, songs are monologues basically, right? You can get inside what they're feeling and thinking. On stage, you have a monologue, a Shakespearean monologue, where you get inside. You know, in a musical, with a good musical, yes, there's entertainment, but you can tell a story. And my test always and I know this is the test that true, people who really know musicals and musical film understand. If you pull the song out of the film, and you don't miss it, it didn't do its job. Because something has to happen in the story and to the development of the character in the song. So both Reach for the Gun is a perfect example. At the beginning, he's trying to sell the press the idea. He's trying to manipulate the press as the master puppeteer, that they both reach for the gun, and that's what he wants on the front headline all over Chicago, right? So at the beginning, he has to, first of all, she blows it and speaks when she says she wouldn't, because she wants the limelight, because Velma gives her that little nasty bit of advice, don't let him hog, because she... So then he says, shut up, dummy, and it turns into a ventriloquist vaudeville number. Amazing. But during the number, what's so great is that slowly but surely, he gets frustrated in the middle because they're not getting, they both reach for the gun. And then they go, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, they both reach for the gun. They're like a little louder. That's right. And so what happens is it progresses so that then she starts off, it's the beginning of a press conference, and by the end of the number, she's a star in Chicago. That's a number you can't pull out of the musical because it works so deeply in storytelling and character development.
Raise your hand. Oh, Jane has been asking.
Yeah, it was just tremendous. I just so enjoyed this all over again. It's been like, I don't know, 10 years since I've seen it.
Oh, nice.
It's just fabulous. But we were talking about the American values connection, and I was just thinking, it's so American to reinvent yourself.
Yes.
You know, you could be completely in the depths of despair, you know, gone to jail, you've absconded with somebody else's money, but you can reinvent yourself.
Totally.
You're bold, and so I just thought that.
Well, they were reinventing themselves every 3 days, right? Because they had to get the attention swung back to them.
And in the big scheme of things, Chicago was where we were inventing ourselves at this time. You know, with communication, with television, with broadcast radio, with the newspapers, with women getting their voice, the 19th Amendment, the right to vote. You know, I was just telling you about the League of Women Voters started in Chicago months before the 19th Amendment happened. I mean, it was also bootlegging and prohibition and, you know, the mobs, and it was also that.
But they were hanging up those dresses, those
and
girls.
they were putting on makeup and driving cars and doing what men could do.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They were doing all that stuff, smoking and drinking. And my grandmother was the first woman to drive a car in Maplewood, New Jersey. And she was a suffragette. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it was that Chicago was the place that it was all starting with jazz, the new music, the new expression.
Yeah.
So it wasn't all bad. It was moving forward too.
Yeah.
And you let that really ride through where you just thought there's no way you're getting out of this, and you really let it go through kind of with gusto, that at the end they triumphed.
Yeah, I mean, I will say it's a triumph, but it's a sad commentary at the same time at sort of fame.
At what cost?
The emptiness
you know,
of
that's
fame.
why it goes into Roxy's face.
To tell you that here comes the scoop that we probably never told many people. It used to be a darker ending.
It was. Yeah. It
So
didn't
at
have them raising their arms in triumph.
No. What happened was we went to the applause turned into gunshots.
And it went into Roxy's face, and it just changed. She was like, and it just slowly.
And you heard ba 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 gunshots.
Slowly,
and
like,
it was like
what cost fame.
So yeah, what cost fame?
Yeah.
And so
I love that.
and that was a strong thing. And I will say Harvey had, and I've never experienced this ever, not one note for the whole movie, not one. And I took Harvey Weinstein didn't have one note on the film except the end. And he said, "Is there any way we can achieve both?" And it was very smart because it's a musical too. So can we have? So that's why that crazy.
And I said no, and Mikey said yes. He's
So
the
let me think about
compromiser.
that. Well, because I thought, well, I wonder if we could achieve that. I wonder if we could achieve that. So it finishes singing all that jazz, and it's wild and crazy, and you see. I mean, all that crazy cutting at the end is that kind of circus manic craziness, and it seems a little greedy, and women seem a little greedy, and it's so it's a taste of that. At the same time, you're also you have to do a musical that has that kind of excitement at the end. So we worked hard to find our way into that ending.
And it speaks to the murkiness of the old thing, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
you have to remember it's a satire,
Yeah.
right? The matron of the jail is their agent. Just to be clear, right? Do you know what I mean? And Billy Flynn is tap dancing through every trial. I mean, it is a satire of that time, no question. And there is a sense of triumph for these two down on the luck girls, but it does say something about American values, for sure.
Yes.
It does say, you know, that we're like suckers. And we buy it and watch the Housewives of Atlanta, and they're stars.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the
Everyone's
truth.
watching.
Yeah, but from a European, coming from Europe,
Yes, yes.
we love these values. We love the resourcefulness. You know,
Yeah.
from seeing it, I was seeing the film yesterday, and it just like it speaks so much to the resourcefulness and to the inventive. We are much more jaded. Right? Yeah. So,
Well, it's funny. It's a satire, and there's a cynical nature, but we ask the actors, don't play the cynicism at all, ever. You know, just play the truth of the characters. You know, let the comment be on the piece itself.
Yeah. I think she had a question.
Yeah, I wish you would talk about the Sophie Tucker aspect of Queen Latifah.
Oh, so
That's
yeah.
so amazing.
Well, I'll tell you something. She was very brave, and this is a fun little thing. On the morning we were about to
This
shoot
freaked
it.
me out. This,
The morning we were about to shoot it, I turned to John and said, I'm restaging.
I had worked months on her to get her to do, it wasn't.
John,
It was a process.
John created all those.
And I love her to
But
death.
John, you created all those performances.
Yes.
I'm
So
sorry.
go on.
No,
But-
I'm seriously. He crafted everybody's
But so
performance.
we had this, we
In
had the
rehearsal.
number all done,
Yes.
it all happened on stage. And then we were in kind of audience as we were filming it. And I'll let you take, but I just wanted to give that, we were so specific on every little gesture.
Yes.
And then Rob said, I don't know, I think she should come out into the audience. Which means change the whole number. And I was just like,
You know what I?
And she was like,
you know what I
sure,
thought about?
everything.
I woke up and I thought I feel it's a little stage bound, and I also remembered she was a talk show host at the time, and I
Yeah.
said she's going to be more comfortable down amongst the
It was.
people.
so scary.
She's not so, and I just know it'll come to life. So we restaged it that morning.
But those are my favorite moments, those kind of things. I love them.
And the great thing was because she was a rapper, we didn't know that she was a singer, and also she was a talk show host at the time, not really an actress. She had done some, but not much. So we weren't sure about her.
Was she your first pick?
No.
No.
Who was
No.
your first pick? Where'd you
She didn't get chosen until very, very late.
It's fun
she
because
came up and auditioned in Toronto where we were filming.
I mean, I'll tell you who my first pick was because it's out there in the world. I know it is. I had just finished working with Kathy Bates on Annie, and I just thought, and she's a singer, and she had just played Miss Hannigan in the Annie I'd done for television. I like having people around me that I know, that I like, that I enjoy working with, and the studio wasn't thrilled about that, just because they wanted something sort of fresher and newer. And even though I loved Kathy, I was excited about the idea of a multiracial cast. That was exciting, so I really wanted to see if that could happen. So she had a full-on screen test,
And really worked for the role.
she won that role.
She was put
She
through
won.
that.
She won it, and
Yeah.
she was,
And she owns it.
and she owns it. She
And
just.
she was afraid of, I remembered having to draw the singing out of her. She has a great voice.
Yeah.
I mean, she can sing long, big, huge notes. She didn't want to show off.
No.
You have to kind of
She's
push
such
her.
a
I love that about
I mean,
her.
you call her Latifah, you don't call her Queen, just to be clear. You call her Latifah, and Dane is her real name. And she's a sweet, lovely woman. And so she just, in a weird way, even though she looks tough, it was harder for her to sort of be that tough.
Yeah.
Because that's not really who she is.
When she comes up in that blonde wig, I mean, that Roxy's wig, I mean, that's just, every time.
But she was just a joy.
That was him.
The thing is, and this is what John and I do on all of our films, because we do rehearse, we do create a company. And in that, it's during that rehearsal time where everyone starts being on the same page, doing the same film. And that's when, it's that kind of time, I think, right, John?
Yeah, we just finished, we're working on another film that's, people are starting to watch the version that we have now. And the company's coming back together watching it, and they remember it so fondly because of the rehearsal time.
Yeah.
That's what they remember, because they never get a chance to do it.
Yeah.
And you get to know people in a
But
whole new way.
then the day you're shooting, it's not freak out time. People know what they're doing. I mean, most movies, they show up on the day and they go. And it just happens. But something as complicated as this needed so much rehearsal.
And musicals. And then they were free to improvise and go wherever they want to go, but they have that rehearsal
Yeah.
underneath.
The concept of company comes very much from the theater, but you think you've used it in film also behind, the camera. You keep working with the same people, your DP, your editors, your production designer.
It's a
And
family.
Yeah, it's sort of a model. I think Arthur Freed, the
Yes.
great,
Yes.
Can't believe you know
Hollywood
that.
producer,
Yeah, This is-
Wizard of
yeah.
Oz and
Yeah.
Gigi.
She's talking about
Brigadoon.
Freed
there was an Arthur Freed unit at MGM. I can't believe you know that. That's so not many people know it anymore. But that's where all those great musicals were created. All of them. The Bandwagon, Singing in the Rain, Meet Me in St. Louis. All of the great musicals were created through the Arthur Freed unit. And that what they would do is they would write a musical for Fred Astaire and Judy Garland, or they would write a musical for Gene Kelly and Ann Miller. And John and I, in a funny way, have sort of created our own little mini Arthur Freed unit, where we are, because we are, we do musicals when musicals are rare, and we have the people that know this. So the designer who is designing Mary Poppins Returns designed this, and our cinematographer, etc. So it's like it's our family, you know. I mean, one thing that was helpful for me coming from the theater about this film is that I consider this a hybrid of theater and film, because all of the numbers are done on a stage of sorts, and so that was helpful for me. In addition to the fact that it worked for the concept, it was something that I was very at home with. So it was for me a nice transition into film.
I think you had a question.
You just called it a hybrid between theater and film, but every shot is pristine. It's exquisite. For you to accomplish in one day what other films would have taken weeks and weeks and weeks, you must have had a very special relationship with your DP, your cinematographer, and you couldn't possibly have storyboarded everything if you were making changes at the last minute. So am I right in that it involved a very high level of trust in terms of working with and it's your first film.
Yes.
So you don't necessarily know lenses and, how did you work that out with him?
Well, that's very, very elegantly said. Thank you for saying that. The studio wanted me to use a very famous DP, Storaro, Vittorio Storaro. And so I remember because they thought you're the new one, so you need someone really solid with you. And so I remember speaking to him in Rome on a phone call in Rome, and I remember before I spoke at all, he said, "I see the movie is red." The movie's red! And I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? I mean, how am I gonna, I can't be walking around to my DP going, "Yes, sir, thank you very much." I had to feel on the same level. So I found a DP younger than me, who had done very little.
Very little.
He'd done
He'd done
a
some
small
commercials.
movie in Australia called Charlotte Gray, but I saw his reel and I saw his work, and it was exquisite, and beautifully lit, and I thought, and I met him, and he's quiet and funny, but quiet, and not the big DP. In fact, to this day, if you walked on our set, you wouldn't know who he was. And a lot of DPs have to be the star. I like no egos in the room. I like every ego checked at the door. That's really important. And so, we've had this incredible relationship ever since. And so what happened was it was built together. And normally on a film of this, with this kind of crazy intercutting and back and forth, there's a lot of storyboarding. But we did something different. We rehearsed, and we did live storyboarding because he came and filmed it with a video camera in rehearsal. So as example, Roxy would grab the bedposts, and then, this happens 8 million times in the film, and then the dancers grab Velma. Do you know? It's like it was like hand, knee, everything. All that detail was all rehearsed, and every second of it. A little thing like these small things. Oh yeah, in All I Care About, he's being measured for a suit. He's lying, saying all I care about is love, which is a big fat lie. And so he's getting fitted for a suit. He kicks the tailor because he's pinched him with it. He kicks him and then he kicks on stage. Like all of that was all. And I remember, I would have my little list. We had to get all these things because you do the master shots, but then you'd have to get all the detail. And it was like, and I would just check it off, get that, because I know I'm going to use every bit of it.
I'm just curious, is there a musical you still want to make? That have they gotten notes about or are waiting to pitch?
Gosh, that's such a good question. It's, you know what?
Yeah, I'm just curious if there's a musical that they want to make, if they've heard no, or they haven't pitched yet.
You know what? It's.
How would you hear the question?
Yes, I can repeat the question. Is there a musical that we have not made that we would like to make? What's interesting is, the good musicals are so few and far between. Great material. This was great material, and so there really isn't one right now that John and I are, we'll find it. And, but it's, you know, with this one, for instance, Mary Poppins Returns is a sequel. And we were excited about living in that world and creating, there were 8 books that P.L. Travers wrote, so there was a lot of material, but it hadn't been touched because the estate had not been touched because she famously hated the first film, which is a brilliant film. And so now our movie takes place in the 30s, and Michael and Jane are grown up, and we were excited about writing a new musical. So we started from scratch and wrote a musical that took us many years. And we started in 2015, and this will open in 2018, this year. So
Christmas, right?
Christmas.
Yes, yes.
So it takes that kind of. So what we did was we found material that we liked, the idea of, but created a musical for film, which is rare, you know, because most are either Broadway transfers, like Into the Woods was for us, or Chicago. We've never done the classic Arthur Freed thing, and write a musical for film, which was incredibly freeing, because usually what you're doing is trying to translate something from stage to film, and this was created just on its own.
Nick?
Obviously, there were endless rehearsals. Were there any moments in the film that were improvised?
Gosh, you know what? Not much. Not much. Because it's such a tight machine, the film. If you know what I mean? That's the thing. There's not a lot of book scenes, you know, there's fewer book scenes because it goes number. And we also actually had to take some numbers out, which was hard. There's a number that we did shoot. You know when Velma and the matron are listening to the radio, and they're listening to Roxy's trial on the radio? Well, there was a number there called Class, which is a hilarious number, about class on stage, and how people have no classes. They're sitting there like, I mean, like almost in a jail, you know what I mean, smoking. And no one has any class anymore. It's a hilarious, funny number. So we shot it, and we put it in the film, and we realized that it was dishonest with the rest of the film, because it was a book number. It was a number just two people singing in an office, and it wasn't the vaudeville number, and it stuck out like that. It stuck out like that, because I think when you do a musical, you have to set the rules of the film in the first 10 minutes. I mean, really set the rules, and then you've got to make sure you follow them to the very end. And we thought, I wonder if it's going to work. I mean, what happened was the lights went down, and so it was slightly theatrical. But also, Roxy was the impetus for every fantasy. It was always through her eyes. She sees Amos as they're pulling away in the police car, and she sees him standing there, and you start hearing the beginnings of the song, Mr. Selby. She's always the person that was projecting these fantasies, and she wasn't part of it. So it felt dishonest. So,
and it was also a ballad of sorts, even though it was funny, and at that time in the movie it killed the momentum.
Yeah.
It was a real momentum killer. It's not, you know, we don't have 2 acts here. It works great in the play, you know, in the musical.
Fantastic.
Broadway show.
It's like an in-one number.
But it just, it killed it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you don't know.
So they told us. We watched it once, and it's like...
Yeah, so it's on the Extras DVD.
I think we're
I was just
Selling-
going to say, it's marvelous. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
To have the music go with the plot back and forth, the way you did it in the movie is just incredible. How everything linked, as you said before, everything went right to the other, just moved it forward. The whole
Well, I mean, it's a combination of things. It's a combination of the wonderful writing of Bob Fosse, Kander, and Ebb, who wrote the piece. And so, and you know, the best musicals have a very small, tight book scenes, because the songs do the work. It's not a glamorous job writing a musical, because the best monologue, the best scene becomes a song. That's just sort of what happens, you know. But so it was a combination of that. Bill Condon, who wrote this with myself, we were meticulous. I mean, we were meticulous, and we said we can't waste a moment because there's a momentum to the piece. You know what I mean? That goes into that needs to, so we can't sit, you know. And what I love about it, having not seen it for a long time.
I was going to say that.
No, I just like that. Just when you think, well, where's Velma? Then there's Velma and says, you know, her son. And then what happened to, you know, Amos? And then Amos has cellophane, and you see his, or you know. So it's a star, you know, a star turn. But you know, the great thing is, you know, every one of them was nominated for a Golden Globe. Every one of them.
He could sing, who was it, John?
He auditioned.
John C. Reilly.
John C. Reilly sent in
He auditioned for us. Yeah.
he sent in the sweet.
Filmed himself.
He filmed himself singing cellophane in his living room. He's
Perfect for
I
the
mean, that
character.
face, he is such a garage mechanic who no one wants to see. I mean, he just so sweet. And, you know, and just so innocent. And, I mean, that kind of high voice, he just kills me. I just love him.
But watching it again, too, there's
It's
something
Ina.
about... Oh, Ina has a question.
Yes.
Emma, yeah.
I was just wondering, with all the rehearsal and all the planning and all the meticulous conceptualizing that you guys did, one of the things that jumped out at me as an incredible challenge and an incredible achievement in this film was the editing and just putting it all together finally in the end. And I wondered if, being a new director, if the editing process revealed anything to you, or if you made any discoveries in that part of the process that you didn't know going in with the rest.
Very much so. I mean, the surprise is, I mean, the thing is, because we were also working so fast, we finished in April and it came out in December. We were moving very quickly. John came on and had his own editor. At the same time I was working. Because
John directed a second unit.
Yes, he did. And also, you know, I mean, if we had only known better, we would both have been producers on the film because that's what we were doing. We just didn't know that.
We just accepted it, you know.
We didn't. It's like, oh, okay, sure. You know, we were very naive in that way. But the editing process, I mean,
He's a meticulous. He's in every second. He sees every frame he films and just has to try it all. And so editors need to be very patient.
well, I mean,
They do.
I guess.
Yeah, they do.
But I mean, style-wise, I wanted quick cuts because I wanted the language of the film to be such that you wouldn't even know if you were in reality or not. So, do you know what I'm saying? So that was the rhythm.
Well, it also feels very 20s. It was like the energy of the 20s and the jazz and the kind of crazy unhingedness of that time.
I mean, if you notice the format of the film, normally John and I work on widescreen. Ever since Memoirs of a Geisha, all of our films have been widescreen films. This one we did in the sort of the tightest possible framing because we wanted to fill the frame and make it kind of a claustrophobic, fast, energized piece.
Yeah.
It worked.
I felt it today. I mean, yeah. I mean, it
That's
has
nice.
that kind of...
I know.
How close to, I know you choreographed it, how close is it to Todd Fox's original, or did you just throw that out and start again? Or was it inspired by?
Such a good question. You know what? I had it when I choreographed on Broadway, I'd followed him a few times, you know, and it's so hard when you follow a master.
Yeah.
Dan Yankee's on stage, but you know what we did? We threw it out.
You threw it out.
We had to because,
Yeah.
I mean, of course there's sensuality to it, but we didn't do all the specific isolations. His stuff is so specific, and ours was freer and different. We purposely did that because, I mean, John's a Bob Fosse dancer. He worked with Bob and knows him well and knew him well. But you know, he's a master. Of course, his work is all over the piece because he conceived it, the original on stage. But when it came down to the actual choreography, we said, you know what, let's see if we can conceive a number completely differently so we're forced to do a different kind of choreography. For instance, like Reach for the Gun as an example. The reporters making the puppets, that was something we created. Because we thought, well, let's do that, and then he can be not only the ventriloquist, which is what he was on stage, but he can be the master puppeteer as well. So we tried to conceive numbers where we were taken away from his concepts and choreography, because he's the master. I mean, how do you compete with that? So, and we had to feel like we were doing our own thing.
And with this, okay, last one.
For the golden age of musicals, do you have a favorite?
Well, Singing in the Rain is spectacular. It's perfect. I mean, it's perfect. I love Me Meet St. Louis because I love that it's just a family where that all that happens is they have to move. You know? But I love the family dynamic. I think Vincent Minnelli is, my great heroes, no question, are Vincent Minnelli, George Cukor, for sure, Robert Wise. I think The Sound of Music is a spectacular musical on film.
They did a great.
William Wyler's Funny Girl is fabulous, I think. I mean, the thing is, Arthur Lawrence said this to Arthur Lawrence, the writer who wrote Gypsy and West Side Story, and once said to both of us, it was a really sweet moment. He said, you either have it in your blood or you don't. And he goes, you guys have it in your blood. That was one of the nicest things that was ever said to us.
Well, thank you, Dr.
Thank you.